What's up, everybody? Jim, Terry, and Chris Carl here with this week's Keeping It Real podcast, the Big 301. That's the big 301.
Really coming down.
Yeah.
Big 301.
Yeah, look, I'm getting up there now.
Listen, we're not going to talk about personal preferences anymore. It's all about business.
So here we are back. Last week was the big anniversary episode, so now we can let just everything go back downhill where it was.
Exactly.
You know?
Just sliding downhill.
We can just go back to
600.
slacking and just doing a half-ass show. You guys are used to it by now, so don't sweat it. So we actually do have a few things to talk about this week with a very sci-fi flavor to this week's episode.
My favorite flavor.
And so we are going to get into rumors, of course. That's what we do. Some of them spoilerish, some complete bull. But we'll talk
separate it out.
we'll do it regardless. So let's start with some Star Wars speculation, but it's based on a product image that's out there and is legit. So if you don't want to hear this, cover those little ears and skip ahead about 10 minits.
What'd you do if I just like walked out right now? I'm like, nope, no Star Wars spoilers for me.
Don't want to hear.
You're like, I don't give a damn, I'm out. So there was a trading card going around that shows with like color coding for each of the new characters, whether they're Sith, Jedi, I think Rebel, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And Rey, Daisy Ridley's character, her color coding and designation was Jedi.
Which is curious, in fact, because it takes some training to be a Jedi, as we know.
Does it?
Luke didn't really even become a Jedi until Return of the Jedi.
Yeah,
right?
look, he just, he worked out a little bit in the swamp, Couldn't quite get it up. I mean, the X-Wing.
One-handed push-ups and whatnot.
Yeah, with a little toad guy on his back.
Just running around the.
Just thinking like, hey, I'm just, that was like his Vietnam, basically.
Well, I think
the swamp.
the flip side to this was not only that Rey had the Jedi designation, but that Finn did not.
Right.
Which people, when we found out that Finn had a lightsaber, we were like, oh, does this mean he's a Jedi? Well, maybe he just found a lightsaber.
Right.
And is using it. Is there a rule that non-Jedi can't use lightsabers?
No, because Luke wasn't a
That's
Jedi
true.
when he finally got it.
Yeah. So did this surprise you, the potential confirmation?
No, I mean, one of them's going to end up being a Jedi.
Right. Oscar Isaac.
Yeah, it turns out it's Poe Dameron. This is all just sleight of hand. My speculation is that everyone thinks Rey is Han Solo's kid. I think she might be Leia's daughter. Maybe not even by Han.
Assume? Okay, I was like, those two sort of
because
go
we don't know.
together.
Maybe Han. I've joked about that before. What if she is Luke and Leia's kid?
That would blow the lid off this universe, man.
Come on, man. They
The
made
balls
out once.
on J.J. Abrams if he breaks up Han Solo and Leia.
Look at
I'm
Game
not
of Thrones
convinced that they
Star
ended up
Wars.
together. I no longer think. I think because one of the other pieces of like promotional stuff that came out was like Han and Chewie return, and they do say in the trailer Chewie were home, so that means they've been gone a while.
Or they just got back on the Millennium Falcon
Yeah,
for the
that's
first
how
time.
I
That's how I read
yeah.
that line, actually.
Okay.
I think they lost the Falcon. Or maybe, what if Lando just hogged it? What if Lando forever was just like,
They forgot
no,
where they
man, I'm
parked
not
it.
giving it back.
Dude, where's my Falcon kind of thing? Like they can't find it. But I don't know. I'm not convinced that Han and Leia ended up together or any of that. We all want that to be the case, but if you want to create some drama and stakes, having it start with them like, wait, we were supposed to end up together and we didn't.
Right.
And she's like, look, I'm now in charge of this republic, and there's still a war going on. I can't have my my hubby be this scoundrel who's got a bounty on his head and all this jazz. Like, I got to marry up, son.
Well, after she choked out the guy who put the bounty on his head.
Like, oh yeah, I suppose
maybe it's not so bad.
I think what we do know about this movie, or what I've taken away from the little we've been told, is that Han Solo is going to be a main character in this movie, probably more than Luke and Leia. And the photos, like that Vanity Fair spread that we saw, showed us Finn and Rey and Han and Chewie and BB-8 sort of near the Millennium Falcon. So I took that to be maybe this group is going to be traveling together. And it would be a little weird to me if Leia was like, well, I guess this all, if we're talking about Leia being Rey's mother, but being like, hey, guy I used to be with, like, babysit my baby Jedi daughter.
It could be though.
Pitching a great movie here.
It could be though that she and he are not together, but they did have a baby together. You know, that could be the case too. I think Star Trek kind of gives us some clues as to what that relationship could be too. You know, there's a lot of sort of like, oh, we kind of expect Uhura and Kirk to be together, right? Like that was what they were building towards. Didn't you feel that in the original Star Trek
when they were like flirting?
And then there's that moment where it's that Spock is with her, and you're like, oh, okay.
Okay,
I see what you were doing there, and so maybe it's something like that.
Yeah, I feel like there has to be some sort of misdirect with subverting the expectations that we have. But I have to say, I mean, we're at the beginning of October right now. This movie comes out mid-December, and we know so little about this. Like, that's really cool in a world where we're inundated.
In a world where we're inundated.
You can't say in a world in here. Just
okay, I've said this in a previous podcast, but I'm going to say it again. This movie has nowhere to go but down. The expectations are so ridiculously high, and we've seen very cool trailers, but we've not heard any of these new characters talk, really? I mean,
we've heard their toys talk.
Their toys talk. That's a great indication. And then we don't know what their performances are like, what kind of chemistry they actually have together. We don't know any of that, and we're banking on nostalgia to kind of carry us through with the older characters coming back. But we went down that path before with Indiana Jones, and it didn't quite recapture what worked, and that brought back, most of the original folks behind it, both in front of the camera and behind. So I'm just like, I think it'll be a good movie, maybe a great movie, but I think we need to start managing expectations here. I'm just saying, I'm here to piss on dreams.
I have to say though, Indiana Jones did kind of indicate a little bit in the trailers and so forth, in the materials that we saw ahead of time, that it was maybe not the same. Like, everybody's kind of like, yeah, I'm excited for this, but what's the monkey stuff? And what's this other thing,
Shia LaBeouf?
Yeah, some of the casting.
I don't think there's been anything so far with Force Awakens that's given me pause. And I will say, I love J.J. Abrams. I think that he has a lot of great ideas, but his execution is not always the best. I think
he sticks the landing sometimes in his movies.
That's
what I'm afraid of
I think he's had a lot of good movies, but maybe not a great or amazing one. And I hope that this is it. But to me, when I was at Star Wars Celebration when they debuted that new Star Wars Force Awakens trailer that ended with Chewie, we're home, and I could just feel in that room the sense that it's not like Spielberg trying to recapture what worked. It is a huge Star Wars fanboy, very talented, who is saying, hey, I get what works about this franchise, and I'm going to try and make something that does it justice. And that makes me excited and gives me a new hope for this franchise.
He's building it the right way, right? Like, he's gone back to practical effects. He's gone back to trios of characters and the things that worked about the original series and the things that people expect. You haven't seen yet that annoying character that's just going to piss you off.
BB-8.
BB-8 is
I've been
awesome.
saying he's a racist.
Oh, well.
He's got to be something terrible, right? He's got to have a dark side.
No, I mean, I think that's the thing so far that stood out to me.
Who programmed him with all these anti-Semitic rants? What the hell were they thinking? How droid is he?
There's just been nothing so far that has been bad about it.
Yeah.
That's a marketing success. Maybe that's what's giving you pause, Jim, but I see hope in that, Terry.
Well, I mean, I'll just remind you guys, Super 8 had great trailers too. And then when you finally saw it, that whole bit with the alien, it
was
didn't
three
work.
Quarters of a great movie too.
Yeah.
And if the ending had worked, it would have been great. So.
I guess I'm just trying to, I just don't want to be hurt again.
Well, fortunately, the ending of this movie is not an ending because it is a setup for it's passing the ball.
Beginning.
Yeah, it's passing the ball to Rian Johnson. So I don't know. Maybe that's okay.
We want to know what you folks think of these Rey possibly being a Jedi. Who do you think her parents are, her parentage? Are we making too much of a big deal about who her parents are? Maybe she's just some Dickensian orphan, you know? Maybe it doesn't matter. Let us know. Dickensian, whatever the day, Dickensian. So let us know in the comments, and let us also know, is it too much hype? Is it going to be, is it too good to be true? We want to know all of this stuff. Let us know in the comments. Let's move on to some other science fiction stuff. Ridley Scott's been out promoting The Martian. We'll talk more about that movie later on in the podcast. But boy, oh boy, that guy has just been chatting up a storm about Prometheus 2, which he said is going to be called Alien: Paradise Lost.
Wait, first show of hands. Does anyone in this room want Prometheus 2 / Alien Paradise Lost? Okay,
no.
one.
Oh,
all right.
I do.
All right, all right. I just want to like
for those only
set
listening,
the stage.
Terry and I are against, and Carl is pro Prometheus 2.
The thing is like Prometheus definitely had its problems. There were some plot problems in that movie I think we're all aware of.
Yeah.
But I still thought it still worked for me on a level, and it still worked for me in the Alien franchise to some extent. I think there's a big learning curve from that movie to the next one, and you know I'm gonna give Ridley another shot at Alien. He brought it to life in the first place.
But he's making so many contradictory statements, like that it's going to be it'll be a new creature. No, we're bringing back the xenomorph. No, it's going to actually be a new variation on the xenomorph. Like, what is it,
well,
dude?
Maybe this is his flipper hands.
Based on what we've seen in Prometheus, it could be all of those things at once. Like, maybe none of them are.
And that they are going to go to the engineer's world as the last film set up, and that it's going to. And one thing he had said was the reason why it's like Paradise Lost is like he said it's kind of like in Milton where. The bad guy will be the handsome one that everyone wants to be with, and the good guy's the schlubby, boring one. Again, though, like it just seems like he would rather. It's like the way he did a Robin Hood movie. He really wants to do a movie about the Crusades, but he's going to throw the Robin Hood label on there. You really want to do a movie about ancient astronauts and basically God being an alien. But you just want to stamp it with the Alien franchise name, which I don't think they go quite.
Maybe, but in this day and age, you sort of have to, right? That's why we have so many franchises being rebooted and redone. Like and this sort of could lead into a conversation about The Martian later, but you don't see a lot of new franchises that don't have a leg to stand on, doing much of anything, either on the studio side, moving forward with them, or necessarily doing stuff in the box office.
I cannot wait for Gravity 2. Gravity 2, Gravity harder, away.
Spin faster. Get lost.
I don't even have anything quippy to say about that.
I want The Martian to be a prequel to Prometheus.
No.
And that Mark Watney, Damon's character, is actually the father of one of these things. And Ridley, because they're all at Fox, Ridley will milk this thing. And let's not forget the fact this man is almost 80 years old. And he's talking about, well, we're going to actually lay all the groundwork, and that it's going to lead right up to the beginning of Alien. But we might not get there until Prometheus 4.
I love that,
like
man.
we're ever getting that.
I love that.
No,
I like and respect the fact that he is in it to like win it. Like he's gonna keep going.
To milk it more.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you think about Wes Craven, and he had always said like I want to die on the set. Ridley Scott strikes me as the same kind of guy. Like he's gonna make movies until the end, and he wants to be making the movies he wants to make. And as long as he can get the money together, let him.
It must be so interesting for some of these directors, like we were just talking about Spielberg and Indiana Jones, and to a certain extent, like Lucas with Star Wars. But the state of movie making has evolved so much since they were, young, hot filmmakers. And so for us to be at the point right now where everyone does want to...
Spielberg's still pretty good looking.
Well, yes. But no, to be at this point right now where the industry is driving, revisiting, and going back on our nostalgia, that for them to still want to be in the industry, they sort of have to do that. I think.
I guess they do have to trade on their. I guess it's like when you see, older music acts. They come out on stage with their new material, but everyone still wants to hear Satisfaction or whatever.
So
you know?
at what point do you just give in to
yeah,
that
you're
and say,
just like,
all
all right, we're doing a new spin on my greatest hits. This is the acoustic version of Born to Run. This is the, and I love I love the Stones and Springsteen, and I still think they got it. But you know, it's like at a certain point, yeah, they just kind of realized like, well, you know what? Give them what they want. I'll put out my new stuff. It won't do as well as the classics, but I'm still working, and I still love what I do.
But the thing, too, is, like, at what point do you...
billionaire.
Yeah, right? Like, at what point does the creator lose touch with what made that special, and is it better to have someone like J.J. Abrams, who's a fan of Star Wars, come in and take up the mantle? Like, we've seen that fail as well, but...
Well, on your point, and this is actually a natural segue, the more you do these podcasts, you're going to learn I love me the segues, and I don't mean the Paul Blart kind.
But we will bring those in soon.
We will. One of these days, we'll do an actual mobile podcast. We're just kind of scooting along. Now, hold on. I don't want to lose my segue.
I want to say something about a segue right now.
Okay, go for it.
Do you remember when the segue was coming out, and Steven Spielberg and various people were like, this is going to change the way that we build cities. And now it is associated with Paul Blart.
Yeah, exactly.
I just love that that's where we're at.
I just think Job from Arrested Development every time. I can only, when I picture a segue, I only see him on it. So now from a segue to a segue
to a
actual
segue about filmmakers, you know, wanting to come back and revisit their stuff. Well, sometimes it doesn't take 20 years for them to want to come back and revisit it, and it doesn't necessarily mean people really want it or that it can happen. On that front, we've got some stuff on Avatar 2 and Pacific Rim 2. Let's start with Avatar 2. Now, there was some art that came out that turned out not to be actually real. It was a fake account for the producer, John Landau.
Damn internet.
But it looked, to me, it just looked like something like, it looked like a promo for Cats, you know? And I don't, I mean like the musical. But it got me thinking, like, again, James Cameron is making these movies eventually, someday. He wants to do 2, 3, and 4. Still working on the script, but it's like, you and I, Chris, seem to have a different opinion on this. Of like,
as we do of Ridley Scott, apparently.
Yes, yeah. Well, you know, you're fine with him returning to doing that. I feel like Cameron and Ridley Scott should, you know, do something new, visit a new world. But give us your thoughts, Chris Codd, and then Terry, yours.
I think James Cameron has done a lot of films, and he's done some sequels that were really, really beloved, you know? And he's done his own franchises that were beloved. But like, I think this one's really, really special to him. It kind of combines technology, especially part 2 here, which is going to, you know, apparently take place in the water, which is another James Cameron, you know, thing that he loves. So I think he's like the person who has now made the top 2 movies in the world, in world history, wanting to go back to his success and expand on this world that he has made. I think he has every right to do that, and everybody will give him money to do that. You know, like, he could put his own money into this movie. That's how much money he's got. Like, he could make it completely himself and reap all the benefits. But I feel like this movie's going to be fine. I feel like people, you know, like, don't like the pace of the way it's coming out at all, and that's what they're reacting to. But when it comes out, I think everybody's going to love it, and not everybody.
But it will be. I mean, if it comes out in 2017, that'll be 8 years since the original came out. And I liked the original one when I saw it. I gave it a good review. In the years since, it hasn't quite stayed with me. I think it's very much of the moment. I mean, even like the pop culturally, it doesn't seem to have had any kind of staying power.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a plug, but Matt Singer at Screen Rant, I think last year, went back and revisited Avatar because it is the biggest movie ever, and no one really talks about it. I think that's why people were sort of like excited to have something to say about Avatar 2, which ended up being the fake art. But yeah, like, why is this a movie for all the money it made, for all the buzz it had at the time, something that just faded away? And I know, like, I do not begrudge James Cameron the time he is taking on it. He certainly took plenty of time between Titanic and Avatar and did amazing things for 3D and CGI in the process. I just think And you know what? I don't think it even matters whether we care about it. Like it's gonna come out. Like, it's gonna be big.
He's making this movie whether you want it or not.
Yeah, I think Avatar Land will open before Avatar 2 comes out. But I think it is an interesting case where in this day and age of the internet, everyone wants things when they want them, and it's rare for a filmmaker to just say, well, I'm just gonna keep exploring the depths and figure out how to make this work, and when I'm ready, the movie will come out.
It's same as a lot of times when games get delayed, they get delayed for a year or 2 years. A lot of games out of Japan, definitely follow this thing, and it's everybody wants them super badly, and that's that's human nature. You get introduced to something that you liked originally, and they're like, hey, there's gonna be more of this, and you're like, cool, I want it. And now it's at a fever pitch, but for something like Avatar, you've been wanting it for 8 years. If you're a fan of Avatar, I can understand when people get worn out with that. Yeah. But like I said, like you said, it's not gonna matter in the end. And I think people are gonna still pick apart every little nugget as it gets revealed over time. I don't know. I'm not too stressed about that. I think James Cameron is.
You should be losing sleep, Chris.
But I think the thing too is Avatar was a very well packaged, complete story. It obviously left things open for it to continue, but there was no one or two post-credit stingers or big cliffhanger ending. And I think for me personally, and there could be fans out there who are losing sleep over it, but I'm okay, when we get back to it,
don't do that.
Please tweet at us if you are losing sleep over this. I would like to speak with you. No, but I, when he does return to it, and maybe we're going to get a trilogy, it sort of seems like that's what he's planning with what's coming next. But when it comes out, we'll figure out what he is doing new with this world.
Well, on the tip of filmmakers returning to things and things getting delayed, Pacific Rim 2 has been officially and indefinitely removed from Universal's release schedule. Guillermo saying he's going to do a small indie film next instead of Pacific Rim 2, and that they want to keep working on it and working on the story and all that. But that's a movie that was frankly lucky to even be considered getting a sequel. That's only maybe going to happen because of the amount of money that it made in Asia, but it's not. I think Legendary, they're looking at, yes, they made a bunch of money off Jurassic World, but they have Warcraft hanging overhead, which is a huge question mark. They also made Straight Outta Compton, but between the money they made on those two and then pouring it back into something like Pacific Rim 2, which is not a sure thing, and again, Warcraft, we don't know if that movie's going to work. I can't begrudge them pumping the brakes and being you know what, if we're going to do this, let's make sure everything's lined up right. And but we also have to see, they also have Crimson Peak coming
it's
up.
not a huge vote of confidence on the eve of Crimson Peak coming out.
And we don't know if that movie's going to do well, and we don't know, how people will respond to it as a creative piece, and what that means for Guillermo. And
I feel like Crimson Peak is the closest we're ever going to get to a Lovecraft thing from Guillermo,
or his Haunted Mansion movie.
I think it's the closest thing to either of those, probably.
He can't do At the Mountains of Madness, as he's talked about, going back to Prometheus. No, what I was going to say, I'm okay with a creative reset for Guillermo del Toro. For me, my favorite movies that he's made have been Kronos and Pan's Labyrinth. I think, I talked about that last week. I really love that movie. And that you can feel, maybe it was just the fact that he was making it in a different country with a different set of studio stipulations. But you can feel that, he kept it small. He kept them tight for the most part.
He kept it real.
It was very much his vision.
She didn't get the reference to the show.
Listen, I'm trying to make my passionate Guillermo del Toro film. No, I feel like maybe, with the expectations of box office inflating so much over the years, maybe Guillermo getting bigger and bigger and bigger isn't necessarily the best for him. I really enjoyed Pacific Rim, but I do not think that it was a perfect movie. We'll see how Crimson Peak does. But yeah, I'm okay with him sort of getting back to basics and figuring out what works for him and then going back to something big from there.
I was really excited about that movie, but I think it was like one of my least favorite of his movies because it just didn't have some of the heart and soul of some of the things that he's done before. It just felt like a little bit more like flash, and I thought the effects were great.
Yeah,
and
I mean that shot of
cool.
where we used to call it on the podcast boat bat when when Jaeger's got the tanker.
Yeah.
But it just sort of I caught a lot of hell online when I said when the trailer first came out and I heard some of the dialogue. I said it's like an Emmerich movie.
Yeah.
And people, all the Guillermo defenders came flying at me.
I almost want to now. I'm like,
well,
what?
But I'm like.
I don't think that's an insult.
Well, look, I like Roland Emmerich's movie. I haven't seen Stonewall, and it sounds like dog mess. But it just, I don't know. I guess I was a little harder on it because I know how good Guillermo is, and you come to expect like that guy. We've said before a bunch of times, like he is kind of a schizophrenic filmmaker. Like when he's in Hollywood mode, it's not particularly deep. It's not, and it's. It's to me sometimes it seems like smarter Tim Burton, where it's dark and quirky, a little funny, but maybe a little tone deaf too. And then the Spanish language Guillermo is just an artist, and that's the guy I love,
I like both things though. So like I like to eat Twinkies, but then I also like to go for the like $400 dinner, like.
Well, I've only ever seen you with the Twinkies.
Yeah. When do we get this $400 dinner?
Well,
we're now going to pause this podcast.
Well, yeah. I mean, we will do that later, but we'll hit up.
You heard it here, people. He just made a promise.
$1,200 later, and I'll be real depressed. But
that's where the Twinkies come in handy. Then you can eat those out of.
But we can have both out of the same person, and I don't begrudge an artist for playing in like different spaces. Like he can be really poppy on one side and really deep and emotional on another side. I don't care about that, but I feel like the story still has to like ring true, and it still has to like connect with me. Like on its surface, Star Wars is a very poppy, like, and people connect to it in deep ways because. For whatever reason, for me, it's like I grew up with it and it became my mythology. But if you're just new coming to Star Wars, you'd be like, that was a fun ride,
Yeah, yeah.
So, but it needs to deliver on all those levels, right? Like,
I didn't care about anyone in Pacific Rim.
That was the main.
I care about Charlie Hunnam, but that's mostly because it's Charlie Hunnam.
I think that was the main sin of the movie, though, was that you have to be invested in at least one character to like.
Yeah.
Make the epic
Hellboy
thing
movies, you
around
care about Hellboy, and you care about Abe Sapien, and who was Selma Blair's character's name again? I forget. But like those characters.
She clearly emotionally resonated the strongest with us.
But you did connect with Hellboy, right? And you did connect with Abe Sapien, at least in those movies.
And I mean, Ron Perlman, for all that I love him, is not a golden hot heartthrob Hollywood whatever, like, and not
I have a story about that.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing that. And I mean, again, I think Charlie Hunnam is great. I think he can be great. I think he was great on Sons of Anarchy, but I also think, maybe Guillermo made certain choices because there was a studio stipulation, we need some hot face to market the movie versus this, could be.
It's part of being a
Talking out of my
director.
butt right
You have
now.
to deal with that. You have to deal with that, and in some cases you have to make that work for you, or you have to recast it. You have to say, put your foot down and say, this isn't going to work for this thing, and I have to redo it. But I think he was actually fine with
Yeah, no, I should qualify
Well,
that.
Charlie Hunnam's in Crimson Peak, so I must have liked it.
and
I think they got along famously.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I liked Pacific Rim. I liked that Guillermo made a Hollywood mech movie. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
As someone who like grew up and loved
What is it?
that sort of animes.
God, when that movie's coming out, we used to come out. What is it? Ultraman or whatever that stuff.
I feel like it was like Evangelion come to life.
It was Mobile Suit Gundam, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it was like Gundam, yeah.
I think Evangelion went a bit deeper and
it definitely
crazier
did.
than...
I'd love to see that adapted, but I just don't know how you would do it. I would love to see somebody do it right.
Can you do it right, though? Was it done right the first time? They keep going back and
I honestly don't think
it.
that the end was done right, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, they ran out of budget. That's a
I'm
completely different
I'm going to
story.
say I don't know enough about Evangelion to wager a comment. Although it is
We
the
should fix
internet,
that.
I should just say things like,
I went back
that's
and
never going to
rewatched
work.
I went back and rewatched it not too long ago, and it's like God, that series is so good and it still holds up so well. And that ending, like you're like, oh, it couldn't be as nonsensical or whatever as I remember. And then you're like, oh no, they just ran out of budget.
There's no payoff to it. It's like you're watching like I don't even know what
well, it's like sketches and reused footage and, you know.
Well, on the note of like anime not translating right to the screen, we actually do have a review up now for the Attack on Titan live action film.
Yeah.
And I am aware of that anime. I watched a good chunk of it, not all of it, but our review is up and it ain't pretty. It's
scathing.
I think it got a 4.2 out of 10.
4.2, yeah.
And a lot of the points that Miranda brought up in her review.
She's our IGN's anime
Yep,
expert.
Anime Club.
She is the person
check that
to
out. You know, yeah, she's our big anime expert, and she did tell me kind of, you know, on the QT about some changes they made to some of the characters' motivations, and I'm like, why would you drop like that very specific element? Like it just sounds like they made a lot of bad creative choices. They took the kind of kick-ass female character from the anime and just made her sort of like the almost weepy girlfriend type. Like why? Why would you do this? Like why would you gut the thing that works? You know.
I feel like.
But the Titans look cool and they work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some comments to the effect of like, you know, everybody gets on America about not adapting anime very well. It's worldwide. It's like Japan has not done a great job of it either. And I think it's partially because it's difficult to take what it is about anime and put it on the screen in a way that makes you connect with it in the same way, you know? Like
it's just a heightened intensity to everything. To the
if Toy Story was live action, like it probably wouldn't feel the same.
And there's a language to anime too, like a certain understanding when you're watching it that does not, I don't think, translate to live action. Which is why, going back to Pacific Rim, it was sort of fun to see Guillermo do it with an original property, because I think in some way he did capture what was cool about it.
But we were talking about original stuff before, and one of the things that is so difficult is when something like Pacific Rim comes out and barely makes it. Like, we're going to do a sequel, but it's only by like the skin of our teeth. That's what gets studios in this mode of like, oh, we need to go with the tried and true. We need to slap Alien on the title. We need to do all these things. It's like, you take a big bet on something like Pacific Rim, and it could be a franchise or it could be a nothing, you know?
Yeah.
And this happens with adapted properties too. The young adult stuff happens all the time.
I mean, I think we could see it with Warcraft. If Warcraft fails, then they're going to be like, all right, well, no point in ever doing a video game movie again that's big
or at
budget
least one
quality.
that we're going to spend that much money on.
When we were leading into Prince of Persia, in my head, I was like, this is the first of 3 or 4 Prince of Persia movies that are probably going to come out of Disney, because that's how strongly I felt about, wow, somebody's actually taking this, you know, and treating it right and doing, you know, all the things necessary. And now we're sitting there, and that was like, that was over in like a whiff, man. It was like in the theater, and you did not think about it again. Well, I mean, I did just this moment, because that's my job. But
yeah, I mean, I think you're going to see more things like, if Warcraft tanks for that much money that was spent, you're going to see more things like Need for Speed, where you can do it for cheaper, and it can, or you know, it'll appeal to fans of a different type of movie, where the video game aspect of it isn't necessarily something that's going to be a turn-off.
Yeah.
I mean, Need for Speed is getting a sequel thanks to China.
Yeah.
You know, so it's again, like, I think you're going to see maybe slightly cheaper or more human, more accessible kind of properties.
But I think that's what they tried to do with Prince of Persia, right? They tried to make a movie that would appeal to everyone, and it really...
Hence Jake Gyllenhaal is a Persian.
Right, yeah. That is just the tip of the iceberg there on that one. But then, you know, it sort of appealed to no one, because it wasn't great for what it was, because it needed to be tied to this property, and it also wasn't a Prince of Persia story that people responded
it could have been a great movie. I mean,
I'm sorry.
It could have
Should we have a moment of silence for you?
No,
now?
I don't care. I don't care at all about Prince of Persia, actually. Like,
you seem really emotionally
I
invested.
just really, I want a video game movie to pop, you know? I want to open that can of worms, so like we can see some stuff adapted well. If somebody comes on board and figures out that solution.
I have hope for Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm excited about that.
But that hope feels like the Prince of Persia hope to me.
Yeah.
You know, like, so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
On the we were talking
you do
about
have a bunch of segues in you.
I'm trying. I'm trying. Look, I got myself a checklist of things we got to get through. You know, directors. You know, the trying to do something personal with a big property. That actually, you didn't mean to, but you did give me a segue with Gambit. Now there were some reports. You know, because Rupert Wyatt has dropped out of directing it, and it sounds amicable. And according to sources, studio sources and agent sources for THR, everyone likes him. He just didn't feel 100% committed to it. And he's a guy who has dropped out of a bunch of different projects. And it's like, if he's going to do something, he's going to be all in. And I do respect that, actually. Yeah. But it's also like, in a way, getting that next big project going, could you actually be hurt by being the guy that constantly gets cold feet at the altar?
Certainly could.
Yeah.
You know, it's like why would anyone ever feel like, even if you sign, that you're actually committed? You know. Well,
you better make sure that the movies that you do create are worth it, worth the hedging,
and make money. Because The Gambler, his smaller personal movie, didn't do anything, and you know, it goes right into Gambit from that. But yeah,
I have a lot of respect for people who say, you know, keep the big picture in mind and say, like, these are my films and this is my name is going to be at the end of all of them. And it's like, if you're fine with just being a shooter and being like, hey, this is my job and this is what I do, it's cool. But if you're like trying to actually have a filmography that like makes sense and stands the test of time, that's why I think Tarantino is such a singular director these days. It's like he's saying basically, I'm not going to make this movie. I'm not going to make this movie because the script leaked first. You know, like, he's very, very particular, and obviously he's finicky about like what he makes, and it's got to be his, and it's got to have his stamp. And it's like, if it doesn't have his stamp, he doesn't want to do it, really. Like, I don't think we'll ever see him adapt anything again. Like, he did that with Jackie Brown-ish, you know, and made it his own. But like, I don't think we'll ever see that again. I think everything is going to be original from him from now on. Original in terms of, like,
I mean,
he borrows from things, obviously.
We're losing auteurs, like some of our best directors, filmmakers, whatever, are stuck to adapting and, you know, getting roped into some of these bigger franchises because that's what's working. And when you know, you look at the track record, and I get frustrated with reboots and remakes and that sort of steady stream, but those are the things that deliver. Like, and it's not like we can collectively as an audience decide to say, oh no, we're not going to see any of those, because of course people will, and some of those movies are really great. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, if Tarantino's movies stop making money, if he, you know, runs out of that studio backing, like Weinstein doesn't keep making his movies, maybe he would have to, or hopefully he would just retire.
He definitely, there was definitely a hiccup there with Death Proof and the fact that Grindhouse was so soundly rejected, you know, critically and commercially. And he's acknowledged that, like, maybe that was a bridge too far, taking your own personal interests a little bit too much to the extreme. So he's savvy enough that he gets that, and he wants to stay in the ball game and leave on his own terms. He doesn't want to be showing out. And I mean, you're right. He is singular. That is the best way to kind of describe the guy.
It's a tough game to play, and you have to become a personal brand in order to do it. And you have to be like, you know what you're getting when you hear the word Tarantino, and it doesn't even apply to some of the great directors anymore. Like, you don't know exactly what you're going to get when you say the word Scorsese. You know, like it's like.
You're going to get Rolling Stone songs.
I kind of,
you know, his movie about like priests in the 1600s. I'm telling you right now, there'll be a Rolling Stone song in there, or some sort of like Japanese woodwind version of like I Can't Get No Satisfaction or something.
Well, it's like interesting. Like even Guillermo del Toro, I feel like has gotten a little bit diluted for me with some of the movies that he's been making. But what you're seeing come out of it is like these trustworthy brands, which is like the, you know, it's a little bit scary with consumerism, but you trust a Marvel movie when it comes out.
Or like, you know, like Spielberg has Bridge of Spies coming up, and I'm not sensing a great deal of heat on that movie. It's a very, I'm personally looking forward to seeing it because I like Cold War stuff, but it's the guys who gave you Saving Private Ryan and The Terminal, but it's, nobody's really talking about it, and this is Spielberg. Spielberg has a movie coming out like in a week or two with Tom Hanks, and nobody's talking about it. And it's like, back in the day, that would never happen. You know, like, have you seen, like, they're not, I feel like they're not even, and I could be totally wrong, but I feel like it's not even being sold as a Steven Spielberg movie. Like you see Tom Hanks's poster with something with like the American flag and the Russian flag, but you kind of feel like, haven't I seen that mock-up before?
That poster.
But do you think that part of that is the age, like the clout of a Steven Spielberg movie doesn't resonate as much to the younger audience?
But also too, it feels like something like, well, that looks like something HBO would make and make well, but I can watch it at home. Like if you're really trying to get asses in seats and get money, you know, Bridge of Spies doesn't look like the kind of thing that's going to open at #1.
Well, it's sort of funny.
Which sucks because I want to see like adult movies. I want to see adult
Jim wants to see adult movies, everyone.
#1. Adult
And that's when we announced that we're launching Keeping It XXX Real.
Hey, wait, you have the internet, right?
Well, you know, when a man and an internet connection love themselves very much.
No, I do want to say, you know, about that, to me, it's a little interesting. Granted, we're in this bubble where we're constantly reporting and aware of the news that's coming out of it. But to me, the one Bridge of Spies story that really popped was that Tom Hanks did a Tumblr takeover and told this story about Amy Poehler and like dating Amy Poehler or something, which I couldn't really tell if it was real or not. What? I think it was like him joking, but you have Amy Poehler and you have Tumblr, and suddenly that's the thing that breaks out instead of Spielberg and Tom Hanks.
Right? Yeah.
So it's sort of like, you know, maybe
Bridge of Spies 2 will have Amy Poehler in it.
Yeah, if like Jennifer Lawrence was in, or like Chris Pratt was in, this, maybe then people would be a little buzzier. But we have like our stalwart, great filmmakers and actors, and you know,
it's just to me it's just interesting that this seems to be the most apathetic response to a Spielberg movie that I can remember. Let's move on from that. Let's talk about
The Terminal.
The Terminal, which I actually kind of like.
But I mean, like, even that though had more buzz heading into it than this movie.
I've never seen a happier portrayal of an airport terminal, and that includes Love Actually.
Everyone who worked at the terminal in the terminal was like, really, what? I want to go through that airport.
LAX.
Yeah, seriously. So, Spectre, give us a little sense.
Spectre, everybody Spectre.
That's already better than Sam Smith's song. I gotta say, everyone who follows this podcast knows I'm a huge Bond fan. And
I thought you were going to say Sam Smith fan.
I like him, but I think, and I was like, oh, he's a good fit for doing a Bond theme song. But I have to say, Writings on the Wall, it's just boring. It's just kind of a dull song. Like,
sounds a little.
And it's really like kind of like just too mellow. Like
droopy.
Well, a follower on Twitter, and forgive me for forgetting which one of you guys it was, but said that it sounds more like the song you play over the end credits than you start your movie with.
Right.
And I'm like, that's an excellent observation, because it did. Like, it's an okay song, but it reminds me of like the song that closed out like License to Kill or Living Daylights. It's not the one you kickstart with. It's no Adele, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, but it does sort of sound similar in style, in execution to
he's trying to be
Skyfall.
kind of, you know.
And there's I am not a music expert
melody,
here.
like there's nothing.
Yeah. There's no hook.
Yeah, I can't, I can't hum the song. I can't really like.
Yeah.
It's really just sort of morose and sort of just there.
But also a little schmaltzy. There's a little bit of schmaltz factor.
It's like, it is. It's
I
got
just want to say
kind of
schmaltz a bunch.
It almost sounds like something that would be like the theme song on like a soap opera or a Lifetime movie. Or it's like the equivalent of the drunk guy at a bar bemoaning, like breaking up with his girlfriend, where he's going to throw in some corniness and then like, I'm sad.
That's harsh.
Do you have a point to your story? No, I just want to drink and be sad. You know, that's kind of what it sounded like to me. I'm like, and I do like.
Sounded
Maybe
like
that's
wispy,
indicative
witsy.
of Spectre.
I'm just saying, it's no Chris Carl song. When are they going to give him the damn job?
Give me the mic.
Do you guys have a particular, Chris? I think you and I have definitely probably talked about this before.
We have.
So let's start with Terry. Do you have a particular favorite Bond theme song, or what you think makes for a good Bond theme song?
The one that always comes to mind for me is Live and Let Die. I think that's just, great. I thought Skyfall was great. I thought Adele was an awesome choice. I don't know if there's a particular thing. It needs to have that same sort of like classic, timeless quality that I think makes Bond still works. I think that's why Madonna as a choice maybe wasn't the right choice. But you want something that when you come back to it,
I did a little shoulder shake there.
Yeah, that was very. We'll get you the cone bra next time. But you want something that when you come back, to it like 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, it's still gonna. Yeah. It's not gonna feel completely dated, and I think that's the goal to a certain extent with Bond.
Goldfinger.
Goldfinger.
Wider than a mile.
Yeah, we were just doing a Goldfinger Moon River mashup.
I don't know why that's the song that when I watch it like that, I love Goldfinger. It's so good.
You know, there's something about like the best Bond songs, and Skyfall had this. There's kind of a brassy quality, like you know,
a little
kind
mystery.
And a little swank thrown in, like to it. You know, like almost like. It should be something that, you know, you would sing in a nightclub in like the early 60s with a martini and a cigarette, you know?
When Live and Let Die gets going, there's a little bit of that reflected kind of Bond theme in it too. Like, da-na-na, da-na-na. You know,
and then
it's
it
like
takes that weird break though where...
But it's awesome. That break is awesome.
Wait, so what were both of your picks?
So mine is I love Goldfinger, but I love Duran Duran with all my heart and soul. So their theme, and I loved the Aha one for Living Daylights
and View to a Kill.
And View to a Kill.
Yeah, I love Skyfall, and but I gotta say, you gotta give a shout out to Carly Simon. She did 2 Bond theme songs, and one of my favorites is "A Spy Who Loved Me." Yeah, you know, nobody does it better.
Yeah,
nobody does.
Not as nuts about what's the one she did for Octopussy, the All-Time High or whatever, but like I get it.
Give us your rendition.
What? Octopussy?
You've been humming it under your breath over there.
I was trying to. Somebody hit me up on Twitter this morning and said, "I want you over the course of the next 5 weeks to redo all of the Bond themes, Chris Carl style." So
Challenge accepted.
I was trying to think of my Octopussy song this morning, and it's like I came up with one, and then. Because I didn't have the medium of the show to immortalize it, it just fell out of my head.
Well, but maybe next week.
Rest assured, I repeated Octopussy a lot, and then I said, "Where are you, Octopussy?" And so we'll make that into song form for next week. That'll be my homework.
That sounds awesome. Everybody tune in next week for Chris Carl and Octopussy.
How could you miss that?
Where are you? Yeah. Actually, I won't be here next week because
New York Comic-Con.
You guys will have to do it without me.
Yeah.
You'll have to like send us a recording, and we'll just have like a cardboard cutout
right
of
now
you
I want to believe that
here.
you actually get there because of Hurricane Joaquin and all that. But let's throw out this real quick about Batman v Superman. Dawn of Justice.
Yes.
Terry wants to make sure I get the correct title.
I have a rule, which is with a name like that, you have to say it in its entirety every time. So you always have to say, there's no BVS, no abbreves, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice every time.
There's something so oxymoronical about no abbreves.
Young and hip, Chris.
No abbreves.
Well, it was rated PG-13. You know, one of the things that landed at a PG-13, which in and of itself, the rating shouldn't surprise anybody, but what did kind of grab folks was that one of the reasons was, quote, some sensuality.
Palpable sensuality.
So we were trying to figure out who is the sensuality between.
Who's bringing the sensual?
I mean, that movie grabs me so much more if it is between Batman and Superman.
That's right.
Well, you were into anime.
I can't quit you,
and
Batman.
Game of Thrones.
You know? There you go. So, I mean, you know, is there something going on there with Wonder Woman and Bruce Wayne? Because we did see that photo of Gal Gadot and Ben Affleck.
Is that too obvious?
Probably, but yeah.
Like, can't we just have Wonder Woman be Wonder Woman?
Yeah. Yep.
Does she need a romance here? She's gonna.
Well, we're not talking about. We're talking about sensual.
Sensuality.
There could just be a little, you know, brown chicken, brown cow going on there.
I think that's still
non-romantic.
Did you say brown chicken, brown cow?
No, the same brown chicken, brown. You
know,
what do you get when you cross a brown chicken and a brown cow?
Brown chicken, brown
cow. That one. Come on, I'm the Fozzie Bear of IGN people. We all know that.
We're really staying on point.
Okay, well, let's move on actually from the sensuality of Batman v Superman since
Dawn of Justice.
Since
you know, they're not doing the sensuality right because this isn't the one with the bat nipples and the exaggerated cod pieces.
We need to go back and look at what the rating for that
Joel Schumacher was trying to. He's out there somewhere going, "Why didn't they say that in mine? I had ass shots for crying out loud."
He had molded.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep
You're
saying
just
molded.
cupping the buns, Chris. That's what. For those listening, I have to actually spell it out since we don't have.
I'm doing the bun cup motion.
Yeah. Let's talk about
cuppage.
Before we get to talking about The Martian. Terry, you actually have some Marvel Studios stuff to drop on us. You spoke to Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios president and producer of their movies, this week, and tell the folks at home some of the stuff that he told you about their upcoming movies.
Well, the best thing about speaking with Kevin Feige is that not only is he the keeper of the Marvel Kingdom, where he is the one who can tell you anything you want to know and not go fishing, but he always gives a good answer, even if he has no details to really share. I love that about him.
He's great with that.
Master spinner.
He is fantastic. So I went to this Blu-ray, Age of Ultron Blu-ray launch event at the Hero Complex Gallery in Los Angeles, and he did a Q&A afterwards that a lot of really cool stuff came out of, and then I had a chance to speak with him for about 10 minutes beforehand and ask my own set of questions. So yeah, we pretty much talked about like the full gamut of Phase 3. To me, I'm really excited about Infinity War. I know that's like about as far out as you can be excited for something, but there's this cool feature on the Blu-ray that focuses on the Infinity Stones and sort of breaks it down for the last 5 people on the planet who didn't rush to Wikipedia and figure out what was going on there. And in it, one of the producers, Jeremy Latcham, said, basically sort of referred to that as like like what they're building up to, you know, the big climax. And so I asked in the Q&A afterwards, I was like, listen, you know, you're talking about that as the climax. Obviously, that's not going to be the end. Like, what do you do after that? Like, how do you deal with that? And what he said was that what we're going to see, it's going to be an end. It's not going to be the end, but it's going to be the end of the Avengers roster as we know it. Okay. And they're still sort of figuring out what that means. To me, that definitely means, and he said some of the Avengers are going to be leaving and not continuing on.
And leaving the Earth.
Yeah, well.
Going to heaven.
Leaving the Earth doesn't mean going to heaven necessarily in the MCU.
It does if you're Captain America. What's up now?
Ayo, dropping some, but yeah. I think, you know, death or just living a normal life. Hawkeye returning to his little farm in the middle of nowhere.
I feel like they do need to, at this point, you got to whack some of the major characters. If you really, it's one, again, spoiler, but, you know, Quicksilver dies in Avengers 2. It's not big enough, you know, like you have to,
Antony
you have
dying
to show.
really got me.
Well,
Ant-Man.
Yeah, Antony.
Sad.
Poor Antony.
It's really sad.
The Avenger that never was. But, and I feel like, you know, the end of Avengers 2 did set up a new, you know, team. But, you know, I think at a certain point you're going to have to maybe kill Iron Man. You know? I mean, that would be a hell of an end, but great end to his story instead of just petering out, you know?
It's really weird the way they ended Iron Man 3 because that was essentially the end of Iron Man. And then when they came back in Avengers 2, it was really like, wait, didn't you, did you hang up all your iron?
Stage
I
left,
thought you... And then they did a really like sort of glossed over way of talking about what had happened in between those two things. And I thought, like, Iron Man 3 was a good end no matter what you think of the movie. I feel like that was him saying, hey, maybe I've gone too far. And then he was tinkering again in Avengers 2.
And then in Avengers 2 it ends with him like saying, you know what, I think I need to take a little break for a while, and he's going to end up back in Civil War doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
But Feige also talked to you a little bit about Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, and Captain Marvel. We did all the things. Yeah, the Spider-Man stuff was cool. That came out of the Q&A as well. I wrote about it on the site. You can go find it on IGN.com. But in terms of Doctor Strange, which I know you are the most excited about, my favorite thing, we talked about how it is an origin movie. He very definitively said that they are doing an origin movie. There was a rumor that it would not be. And he was like, when you have an origin story as cool and established as Doctor Strange, why wouldn't you do that? He talked around Rachel McAdams, saying she had a very big part in the movie, but did not give any hint as to what that was. But then we talked about Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One, and how there's sort of been, like, everyone's a little unclear about whether she's playing a male or female Ancient One, because he's male in the comics. She's obviously a woman, and the D23 concept art seemed to show her as a woman. And Kevin thought that was very funny, that is even a question that we're asking: is Tilda Swinton going to be playing a woman, even though she is a woman? And he said they're going to play with that ambiguity a bit, but yes, she is clearly
as she does
woman.
In some roles.
And that's what he said. He said, you know, like, we have this amazing actress. She's done that before. So
she did it in Constantine, the last supernatural comic book movie. And you know, look, I think she's, and we've talked about this in the podcast too. Like, she's a wonderful get for that character. So yeah, I mean, we've been kind of like half joking in the office. Like, I hope that it jumps back and forth in the movie, that she's maybe a man in one scene and a woman. She's magical. She can do whatever she wants.
The characters don't really know and don't really care.
Wait, you? Oh,
yeah. But then in terms of Captain Marvel, I don't know. You know, how much you guys talked about this before, but I do love that Ronda Rousey championed herself so much to be Captain Marvel. She put up all this fan art. She said it on Reddit. Like, she got all the audiences that needed to be aware that she wanted that role. And so I asked him, I was like, you know, she was petitioning herself. What sort of actress are you looking for? And is this the type of actress who you'd be interested in? He basically said, never say never, again, sort of talking around it, but said, you know, we had everyone from Chris Hemsworth, who bulked up, to Dave Bautista, who was known as a wrestler but delivered this fantastic performance. So maybe, and that they are not going to start really they haven't started dealing with casting yet and having those conversations.
I think it's interesting, though, that he didn't dismiss it out of hand.
Yeah,
you know?
And he said he loves it when there are actors who petition themselves, and how even going back to the early days of Marvel, there were always people who said they wanted to be Wolverine, and he dropped a little Wizard magazine reference saying that like, before there was even Twitter and the internet, people were doing that.
I love Jackman coming out and saying Tom Hardy should be Wolverine, by the way. Like, I hadn't even thought of Tom Hardy as Wolverine until he said that, and I was like, oh, he'd be great.
He's closer to the right size, you know, he's a shorter guy, but he's ferocious. You wouldn't mess with him. He's a great actor, you know. He's got the it factor.
Especially when you can understand what he's saying.
Yeah, well, there's no guarantee that we'll get that with Wolverine. But, you know, another thing on the Feige front, you also, or he also addressed the kind of anti-superhero comments that had come out both from Steven Spielberg and Zack Snyder. Tell folks a little bit about he's very diplomatic, and I love that he stays above it all.
That's what I was going to say. Like, if this whole, you know, movie, Hollywood producer, comic book thing doesn't work out for him, he definitely should run for some, some semblance of politics, because he gives the best answers. But yeah, so he responded to the Way of the Western, Steven Spielberg, superhero movies going the way of the Western comment that Spielberg made, and basically was like, those movies were around for 40 to 50 years. We've only been around for like 8 years since the beginning of the MCU, so okay, we have another 42 years left. Sounds great. And then against the Zack Snyder comment, which, you know, Snyder was responding to Spielberg and sort of defending his DC movies by throwing some shade at the Marvel movies. He referred to Ant-Man as like the flavor of the week Ant-Man. And so Feige was like, you know, I think all of our movies might not even necessarily qualify as like a superhero genre, because they've all been very distinct styles of movies, and that will continue going forward with Civil War and the movies they have lined up.
Awesome.
My favorite Kevin Feige story, I was, you know, we have a live stream every year at Comic-Con, and I was walking him to the set, you know, and we were kind of chatting about what had happened in the con so far, and right before he got to our set, you know, the Batman vs Superman stuff had dropped, and I was like, "Hey, what do you think about that?" You know, it was just kind of in passing, like just
the trailer,
just to him. I was like, "What do you think?" And he's like, "I welcome the competition."
Nice.
That's what he said, dude. He's like always, you know, he's always like, you know, he's a fan of superhero movies. It's not like he only watches Marvel movies, but I think, you know, he's also like, I mean, everybody realizes that DC, you know, is kind of like opposed to the Marvel in everybody's minds, right? So, but you know, he he thought it looked great, you know, and he was just like,
I like that he's handling it like a gentleman. But
Yeah.
He is a gentleman.
Yeah.
I love myself some Kevin Feige.
well, let's move on. In our closing moments, we have The Martian opening this week, which I loved. But you guys haven't seen it yet.
I have not seen it yet. I cannot wait.
I really loved it. It's one of my favorite movies this year, and our review for the movie is also very positive. But I want to ask, you know, Hollywood's got a very spotty to just downright bad track record with movies set on Mars. I'm going to rattle off a few, and I would like to hear your personal favorite and least favorite Mars movies. Here are just some in no particular order, or I should say by the order in which they're displayed here on Google. Mission to Mars, Mars Attacks, John Carter, The Last Days on Mars, Total Recall, Ghosts of Mars, Red Planet, Mars Needs Moms, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, let's skip ahead, Capricorn 1, My Favorite Martian, Stranded, Doom, and
I can't believe we talked about Doom in 2 podcasts.
And was it Watchmen has some scenes set on Mars, but I guess that's a bit of a cheat.
Yeah.
And then so I think I would have to say my personal favorite is John Carter. I really like that movie. It's not perfect, but I love Woola. He's a giant space dog crossed with a frog. Come on, he's awesome. I love that guy. And then least favorite, because I still remember it being just painful to watch, even though Red Planet sucks. Mission to Mars is just horrible.
Is that the one that has Tim Robbins in it?
Yeah, it's the Brian De Palma
There
one.
is that one really, really sort of gripping scene where they're out in space and he's drifting away from, like, I think it's his wife or something.
Yeah.
That was like, that got me for some reason. The rest of the movie, not very good at all, but that one sequence where you know they'll never have enough to get back to each other and how horrifying that would be.
Yeah.
But the rest of that movie.
Just that one scene.
My favorite, Total Recall, probably. Although I also really like John Carter, which we've talked about a bunch. Least favorite, I don't think I tried to watch Ghosts of Mars and I never really made it through that movie. It's
I think I watched it in its entirety. I don't remember it, but it was bad.
Yeah.
The thing I remember most about that movie, Jason Statham's horrible hairpiece. But what? No love for Doom?
I mean, not in my favorites.
Let's fight again.
I thought it was okay. Well, whatever.
How about you,
I mean, I have to go with Doom after what I said last week, that's my least favorite. Although I have not seen it, but I still like Mars Needs Moms. It's got to be one of the worst titles ever.
That's got to be the worst one, though, that we just have all not seen.
Yeah,
well, last week we did movies we'll never watch. Apparently, we should have thrown that one on there.
Move Over Human
huge
Centipede.
bomb,
We
by
have.
the way. It was one
There's
of the
all
biggest bombs.
kinds of animated movies I'll never watch, like Hoodwinked will never, my eyes will never
I actually did see Hoodwinked. But any of those Alpha and Omega movies and all that. But Terry, do you have a particular favorite Mars movie?
You know, as much as I love space movies, I don't think that there is a Mars movie that has ever really like popped so much that I'm like, this is my favorite. But
The Martian.
Well, maybe that will be the one.
The
But
trailer
I think,
for The Martian is my favorite Mars movie.
I will say, of the Mars movies out there, Mars Attacks, because it's just so weird and it really freaked me out when I saw it, and it's just like, we don't get movies
I feel like
that
it's
anymore.
one of Tim Burton's unsung movies.
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like it.
It's
We're
weird.
gonna just oppose each other, but like I
go.
love weird, but
We
like
hate each other so much.
I just did not like I don't know. And the other thing is, this is something we should talk about sometime, but I had this horrible experience where I was sitting next to this dude in the theater who had the worst breath ever, and it totally colored
Look,
my
I eat mince now, okay?
it totally colored my experience of that movie. So it's funny, like once in a while you'll go see something and you'll be like, have an uncomfortable experience in the theater, and you'll be like, I didn't really like that because of this thing, but you don't even think about it. You're just kind of like conflating those things together, and then later on you'll see it and you'll be like, I don't know what I was so opposed to. You know, I haven't seen it since. So.
Yeah. I've not seen it in a very long time.
I just want to note, and I think I may have noted this last week, but there's an old movie. It has Adam West in there. It's called Robinson Crusoe on Mars, and it is basically The Martian.
Nice.
So, and that's not a slight on either film. So I think there's actually a Criterion collection of Robinson Crusoe on Mars. It's
I've
like
not
from
seen it.
it's from like the mid '60s. I think it was right around the time he did Batman. He's not the star in it either. He's like a secondary character, but.
Just a guy.
But we want to know what your guys' favorite and least favorite Mars movies are. let us know in the comments below.
And if you've seen Mars Needs Moms, can you like just tell me about
Is
it?
it a
I don't know
warning?
anyone.
Just give us a
who's seen it.
synopsis.
Yeah, just like thumbs up, thumbs down. It doesn't GIF, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever you know.
GIF, you mean?
And then, of course, we'll have more on the Martian in the weeks ahead. It's probably going to be #1 this weekend. And again, we loved it. Go check it out. And find us on Twitter at Jim Vejvoda, at Terry Schwartz,
_Schwartz,
underscore that Schwartz, and then Chris Carl, at Chris Carl.
So at the end.
All right. So, guys, thanks as always for watching, listening. We'll catch y'all next time.